The human bowed so slowly that Princess Liriana heard 12 alien generals forget how to breathe. One moment the war hall of Asterion was full of insults. Claws tapping on crystal tables, metals chiming against armored chests, old commanders arguing over evacuation routes and surrender language. The next moment, Captain Elias Rowan lowered his head before her throne. One fist against his heart, one knee almost touching the silver floor. And every general who had mocked his plain black uniform went white. Blue, or the nearest color their species used for terror. Liriana had expected outrage, perhaps laughter, perhaps another lecture about how humans were too young, too emotional, too soft-skinned to understand Imperial war. Instead, General Varkan of the Iron Brood knocked over his own chair. Admiral Seleth spread all four wings in panic. Marshal Adrian whispered an oath to ancestors he claimed not to believe in. And the old war priest dropped his ceremonial blade as if the floor had become fire. Ilias remained bowed, calm as winter, while the enemy fleet burned red across the ceiling map. Princess Liriana, ruler of a collapsing moon kingdom, did not understand what she had just been given. She only knew that the most ordinary man in the chamber had bent before her, and the most powerful aliens in her empire looked as if he had unsheathed a weapon. He had arrived 3 hours earlier through a side gate, not the starport, not the ceremonial arch, just a rain-soaked military shuttle with Earth markings half scraped away by old radiation. The court had expected banners, diplomats, perhaps one of the famous Terran admirals whose names survived in border nightmares. Instead, the hatch opened, and Elias Rowan stepped out alone, carrying one sealed case, wearing no armor, no visible sidearm, and a coat better suited to a funeral than a battlefield. He was not young, not ancient, his hair threaded with gray, his eyes brown and tired in the disappointing way of clerks and widowers. Captain Marin demanded proof of rank. Elias gave her a coin-sized token. She scanned it and frowned. "This identifies you as civilian transport liaison." Elias took it back. "Today, yes." He offered nothing else. And by the time he entered the war hall, Liriana was already listening to her generals explain why Hope had become tactically irresponsible. Asterion was dying by arithmetic. The Carvax Dominion had arrived with 9 battle moons, 40,000 ships, and an ultimatum carved into every public channel. Surrender, Princess Liriana. Open the shield vaults. Dismantle the moon guns. Accept occupation governors, and allow the Dominion to take 100,000 noble hostages, or the capital would be sterilized from orbit before dawn. Liriana's father had died at the frontier 2 months ago. Her mother was trapped under medical stasis after a poisoning no court dared name. And every great house looked at the young princess as if grief were a vacancy sign above the throne. Her generals were experienced, decorated and frightened, which made them cruel. They argued for evacuation of the bloodline, abandonment of the lower cities, destruction of grain vaults to deny supplies. Perhaps a ceremonial last stand recorded for history. Every plan treated common citizens as weight. Every sentence used words like acceptable loss, survivable percentage, dynastic continuity. Elias listened from the rear wall, while rainwater dripped from his coat onto imperial marble. General Varkan pointed a claw at him and sneered. Earth sent a witness, not aid. How very human. Eager to watch a tragedy and write songs, Elias answered quietly. We already wrote enough songs about tragedies. That silence bothered Liriana because it was not the silence of shame. It was the silence of a man counting exits in a burning room. She asked him what Earth offered, and the chamber turned with hungry contempt. Elias stepped forward below the crescent throne. We offer a defensive compact, limited recognition of your sovereign command, evacuation support, medical corridors, strategic counsel, and, if requested under lawful authority, military intervention. The generals laughed. Marshal Adrian struck the map table. Military intervention from Earth against 9 battle moons. Does your species weaponize optimism? Admiral Seleth added. Humans arrive late to the galaxy and early to suicide. Liriana felt heat climb her neck. Because she had asked for help, and her own commanders were treating help as insult, she said, Captain Rowan, if Earth will fight under my banner, prove it. Bend the knee. Swear before my court that you and your people serve the defense of Asterion." A few generals smiled, expecting refusal. Elias looked at her for a long moment, not offended, not surprised, only sad. Then he placed the sealed case on the floor, stepped to the center sigil, and bowed. That was when the court learned that a human bow was not submission. It was selection. General Varkan shouted first. "No, Highness, withdraw the command." Admiral Seleth snapped her wings tight and hissed. "Tell him to stand. Tell him it was symbolic." The war priest sank backward, eyes fixed on Elias, and whispered, "Not that one. Not that oath." Liriana gripped the arms of her throne. "What is happening?" No one answered quickly. Because panic had made legends heavier than protocol. Elias remained bowed, one knee just above the silver floor. Waiting, the ceiling map rotated slowly, showing Karvak ships advancing like a red disease through the outer moons. At last, old Marshal Tenrith, the only general who had fought beside humans and lived long enough to stop bragging about war, spoke from the shadowed end of the table. "Princess, humans have many customs. Most are harmless, some are not. The bow of voluntary command is one of the old Terran war rites. If a human commander bows to a sovereign in time of defensive siege, and the sovereign accepts, then that commander recognizes the sovereign as lawful protected authority. It means Earth does not fight as contractor, observer, or ally of convenience. It means they fight as if your civilians are their civilians, your hospitals their hospitals, your children their children." Liriana looked down at Elias. "And why does that frighten you?" Tenrith swallowed. "Because every time humans have done this, the invader has ceased to exist as an organized threat." The words moved through the chamber like cold smoke. Liriana wanted to dismiss them as superstition, but she saw Varkan's armored hand shaking, saw Seleth calculating whether she could fly through a closed window, saw Audrin staring at the map as if the Dominion fleet had become smaller and more dangerous at once. Elias lifted his head slightly. "Your Highness, do you accept the compact?" Liriana could feel every noble behind the privacy screens leaning closer. Her own fear, her father's memory, the voices from the lower city, begging over public channels. She asked, "If I accept, what will you do?" Elias said, "First, I will ask you for permission to stop your generals from losing this war for you." Varkan roared, "Insolent animal." Elias did not look away from Liriana. "Second, I will save as many of your people as your courage allows. Third, I will give the Dominion one chance to leave." "Only one?" Liriana's mouth felt dry. "And if they refuse," Elise's expression did not change, "then every alien general in this room will understand why my people buried the Conquest Age and locked the grave from the inside." Tenrith closed his eyes. As if hearing a funeral bell, Liriana stood, descended 2 steps from the throne, and touched her hand to Ilias's shoulder. "By the authority of the Sapphire Crown, I accept. Rise, Captain Rowan, defender of Asterion." He rose, and the war hall rearranged itself around him. Nothing visible changed at first. No thunder, no flame. No hidden army bursting from hyperspace. Elias turned to the map table, removed a small black device from his sealed case, and placed it beside the Imperial Command Crystal. The device unfolded like a dark flower and connected to systems the palace technicians swore were isolated. Civilian heat maps, shield stress lines, enemy engine echoes, hospital capacity, refugee bottlenecks, old mine tunnels, weather currents, temple bell networks. Even sea beast migration patterns appeared overhead. General Varkan demanded to know how he had accessed sacred military systems. Elias answered, "Your sacred military systems are broadcasting on 4 unsecured maintenance bands and 1 entertainment channel." He touched the map. "The Karvak's battle moons cannot crack your shield vaults quickly if you keep them layered. So they will target Pride, Palace, Noble Quarter, Fleet Docks, Academy Spires, symbols first, infrastructure second. Civilians, whenever it pressures, surrender." Seleth snapped, "We know Dominion doctrine." Elias nodded. Then why are your evacuation routes leading through the first 7 impact zones? Asterisk. No one spoke. The princess looked at the blue lines and felt nausea climb her throat. Her evacuation routes, approved by 3 committees and blessed by 2 temples, did pass beneath monuments and ceremonial bridges. All places the Dominion would love to break for spectacle. Elias pointed again, moved civilians through sewer tunnels, service aqueducts, pilgrimage roads, and the winter grain rail, shut down noble beacon towers. Keep worker district lights burning? That reverses their target hierarchy for 90 seconds. Long enough to move 2 million people under stone, Varkin protested. The lower tunnels are unfit for noble passage. Liriana turned on him. They are fit for children, General. Open them. Officers hesitated, then ran. Elias looked at Admiral Seleth. Pull your fleet behind the shattered moon. Vent heat, kill shields, and hide inside debris, she bristled. That leaves the capital exposed. No, Elias said. It leaves the Dominion confident, Marshal Odrin. Abandon the outer palace walls, put troops inside schools, clinics, transit hubs, food halls. Places civilians need guarded, the war priest whispered. Humans put soldiers behind children. Ilias's eyes turned cold. No, priest. We put soldiers between children and fire. The sentence struck harder than any battle cry. Liriana heard something move in the room. Not furniture, not soldiers. Loyalty, perhaps, or shame. The generals began issuing orders. Some because they believed, some because she watched them. Some because fear of the human had become stronger than contempt. Within 10 minutes, the capital city changed shape. Noble towers went dark. Workers lit furnace stacks as decoys. Temples opened crypt roads. Schools became command nodes. Fishing fleets dragged signal nets across the bay. And palace musicians, confused but obedient, began sending rhythm codes through bell towers older than electricity. Elias coordinated all of it with quiet precision, asking names, remembering them after one hearing. Never wasting a word, he did not command like conquerors in history murals. He did not shout, he did not promise glory. He said, "Move them now. Breathe." Left corridor closed. Send medics to Blue District. No, not that bridge. Good work. Again. And people obeyed because his calm made panic look childish. Liriana stood beside him at the map table, no longer on the throne. Learning that command tasted like copper and responsibility, the Dominion hail arrived at Second Night Bell. Their supreme commander filled the ceiling in enormous red armor. 6 eyes glittering with bored violence. I am Over Marshal Crag V. Hoare of the Carvax Dominion. Child princess, open your shields and kneel, or I will teach your moon the language of dust. Liriana felt old fear grip her. Then Elias leaned close and murmured, "Ask him if his mother knows he repeats scripted threats." She stared at him, horrified. He met her gaze. "Trust me, Highness." So she asked, and every alien general looked ready to die from shock before the enemy fired a shot. For 3 silent seconds, Over Marshal Crag simply stared. The war hall seemed to freeze. Then Dominion officers behind him flinched. One even looked sideways, as if checking whether the insult had hit a private wound. Elias whispered. Interesting. Crag's jaw plate spread. "Your court jester speaks through you, princess." Liriana lifted her chin. "My court jester already found your battle moon's heat leak." Crag's expression twitched. "Almost nothing, almost enough," Elias said softly. "Second moon, underside vent. Black plume every 9 pulses. He is hiding a reactor bruise." Liriana repeated it. And this time, even General Varkan looked at Elias as if he had become a blade pointed in every direction. Crag cut the channel with a snarl. The Dominion fleet shifted formation immediately. Shielding the second battle moon, Tenrith made a small, strangled sound. "You baited confirmation from Pride," Elias said. "Pride is the cheapest spy in the universe," Liriana almost laughed. Then remembered the red fleet above her people. Elias turned to the signal officers. "Send a civilian broadcast.com voice, no royal music. Tell them the first strike will hit the Palace District and empty beacon towers. Tell them shelters are working. Tell them not to look up. Then he looked at Liriana. You should speak, she swallowed. What can I say that is not a lie? He answered, say you are afraid, say you are staying. Say the truth before your enemies get to edit it. Liriana's broadcast lasted 90 seconds. She told her people the Dominion had come, that the first strike would be terrible, that evacuation paths had changed, that every gate was open to every citizen, noble or worker, native or foreign, that she was afraid and would remain in the palace until the last shelter closed. Her voice shook once, and because it shook, the city believed her, the public channels filled with prayers. Sobs, coordinates, old songs, arguments, children asking if the princess could hear them. Elias listened without expression. But when a little girl from the furnace district said she was holding her, baby brother under a grain rail, and not looking up because the princess said not to, Liriana saw his jaw tighten. The first Dominion strike came 1 minute later. Red light fell through the upper atmosphere, not one beam, but hundreds, carving down toward the palace towers and noble beacons. The war hall windows blackened automatically. The floor trembled, somewhere above them. Asterion's famous crystal spires shattered into glowing dust. The nobles behind screens screamed as their ancestral viewing towers vanished. Varkin shouted for counterfire, Elias said. Wait. Seleth demanded permission to launch, Elias said. Wait. Audrin swore the palace shield would not endure, Elias said. Wait. Liriana's hands curled around the map table until her knuckles hurt. Citizens are under stone, he murmured. Their weapons are angry at architecture. Let them exhaust the first tantrum. The red storm faded, reports flooded in. Monuments destroyed, noble quarter burning. Casualty estimates low, shockingly low. The Dominion had struck the symbols, and Elias had emptied them. The invaders had killed statues, and the statues did not scream for the first time that night. The war hall looked at the human with something other than panic. It was worse. It was hope. Elias did not welcome it. Hope makes people stand too soon, he said. Keep them down. The second strike will punish the districts they think we moved into. He was right. The next wave curved, toward false heat blooms and abandoned market squares, then toward the dead beacon towers, then toward the empty academy parade grounds where thousands of student uniforms had been hung on drones to mimic formations. The Dominion wasted precision fury on cloth and stone. Meanwhile, Seleth's hidden fleet drifted cold behind the shattered moon, invisible in debris, waiting under orders that made every pilot feel like a coward until the moment cowardice became ambush. The battle moon with the reactor bruise began adjusting position, protecting its vent, which exposed its command spine to the debris field. Elias said, Admiral, on my mark. Seleth's wings trembled. I thought you wanted us hidden. I wanted them to forget hidden things can move. He answered, Mark, from behind the shattered moon. Asterion's remaining cruisers emerged without shields, without engine flare, falling through gravity like dead metal. Dominion sensors dismissed them for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. The cruisers ignited at knife range and fired mining lances into the command spine of the wounded battle moon. Its red shield flared, cracked, and folded inward. The moon did not explode. Elias had forbidden heroic stupidity. It rolled, crippled, drifting out of formation. Command relays burning, Dominion ships scattered to protect it, and the enemy's perfect siege became crowded. Admiral Seleth shouted triumph over the channel, but Elias cut through it. Pull back now, she hesitated. We can finish it. That is what they want you to think. Pull back. Seleth looked to Liriana. Pride warring with terror of the bow, Liriana said, Obey him. The fleet retreated into debris, just as 3 hidden Dominion hunters emerged where overconfident ships would have been. Their torpedoes struck empty space and fragments of old moon. Seleth's face on the side display went still. Then, ashamed, he saved us, she whispered. Elias had already moved on. Ground teams report shield vault status. The shield vaults were ancient reactors beneath the capital, powerful enough to turn orbital fire, unstable enough to kill the city if cracked. The Dominion wanted them open because once open they could be hacked. Once hacked, the moon belonged to Crag, Liriana's engineers reported pressure anomalies in Vault 3. Then loss of 2 internal cameras, General Varkan cursed. Saboteurs, Elias looked at him. Your soldiers are at the wrong doors. Varkan bristled. We followed protocol. Protocol guards, ceremonial entrances, saboteurs use sewage, maintenance, or vanity tunnels, built for nobles avoiding crowds. Liriana looked at the old palace plans and saw a private pleasure passage from the Thorn Garden to Vault 3. One her cousins had used for secret feasts. Shame and fear burned through her, Elias said, Princess. Permission to enter the Vault network, Sira can lead me, Varkan objected. You are our command center, Elias said. I am one man. The city is the command center now. Keep it breathing. Liriana wanted to refuse. The thought of him leaving the map made the entire war hall feel suddenly less solid, but she saw the logic, the danger. The need go, she said, and hated how much the word cost. Asterisk, the palace corridors outside the war hall were full of dust. Wounded servants, broken glass, and portraits hanging crooked after the orbital strike. Elias moved with Captain Sira and 6 royal guards through side passages, checking vents, locks, blind corners, and ceiling seams. Liriana followed with a pistol and a shorter cloak because she refused to remain on a throne while strangers defended her home. Elias saw her, handed her a spare magazine, and said, Stay behind my left shoulder. The vault passage smelled of wet stone and hot metal. Alarms pulsed in blue because Asterian's ancestors believed blue panic looked dignified. They found the first dead engineer at the vanity tunnel entrance. Body moved respectfully aside. Elias closed the man's eyes, touched the blood on the floor, and said, Not Dominion regulars. Varkan's voice crackled through the bead. How can you know? Elias answered. Dominion soldiers step on bodies unless ordered not to. These killers were raised where ritual matters. Sira whispered house assassins. Liriana felt cold spread through her. My own nobles, Elias stood, possibly, or Dominion-trained nobles, either way. They need you alive long enough to blame someone else. That was when the assassins came out of the walls and discovered the human had been listening to their knives. The first blade punched through a tapestry at Liriana's throat height. Elias shoved her down before the silk finished tearing. Sira fired twice. A shadow fell. Another assassin dropped from the ceiling arch. For arms spinning short swords in a pattern meant to shred armor, seems Elias stepped inside the pattern instead of away from it, caught the lower wrist, used the assassin's own momentum to break the upper balance, and slammed him into the wall hard enough to rattle old mosaics. A third fired a dart pistol from the vanity passage. Liriana raised her weapon too slowly. Elias put his hand in front of the dart. It struck his palm, hissed, and fell dead. His skin darkened around the puncture. Sira cried out, Poison! Elias flexed his fingers. Paralytic, slow in humans, fast in species, with external nerve channels. He looked at the fallen assassin. Which means they expected you, Captain, not me. Sira's face went pale under her helm. Liriana realized the killers had planned every palace defense. Every guard species, every protocol. They had not planned for a human who caught poison with his hand because he understood bodies the way generals understood maps. The remaining assassins hesitated, and hesitation in narrow corridors belonged to Elias. He threw the spent magazine, hid a hidden face in the dark, took one sword from a fallen hand, and advanced not like a duelist, not like a berserker, but like a surgeon cleaning infection, fast, exact, almost sorrowful. 2 assassins dropped alive, 1 fled. Elias let him go. Sira snapped. He will warn the others, Elias said. Yes. We need them frightened enough to make mistakes. At Vault 3, the warning became visible. The sabotaged chamber door hung open, its royal seal cut from the inside. Engineers knelt with hands bound. A Dominion Code priest stood over the reactor altar, and 3 noble officers in Asterian armor aimed rifles at the shield core. Liriana recognized one of them, Lord Thalos, a cousin by marriage, a man who had kissed her mother's hand at funerals. Thalos smiled when he saw her. Highness, thank the stars. The human has taken you hostage, Elias murmured. He rehearsed that line. Thales continued loudly, "Guards, rescue your princess." Syrah's guards froze for a fatal half-breath. Confused by rank, bloodline, ceremony, Elias used it. He did not attack Thales. He shot the ceiling above the code priest, dropping a shower of old insulation into the sacred interface. The priest flinched, fingers leaving the hack controls. Elias hurled the stolen sword like a spear through the rifle of the nearest traitor. Syrah shot the second in the knee. Liriana shot the third herself. Not well, not elegantly, but enough to make him scream and drop his weapon. Thales grabbed an engineer and pressed a blade to her throat. "Stop, or the vault opens." His voice cracked on opens. Elias said, "It is already open." Thales blinked. "What?" Elias pointed with his injured hand toward the shield core. The priest opened a false gate. I let him finish. "It is feeding Dominion code into an empty loop." Thales looked at the interface, then at the priest, whose face had gone gray. Elias said, "You were so eager to betray your world that you never checked whether the door led anywhere." Liriana stepped forward. "Lord Thales, by my authority." Thales shoved the engineer aside and lunged toward the real manual release. Elias was farther away, poisoned, wounded, yet still reached him first. He caught Thales by the collar and drove him into the floor. Not with rage, with finality. "Stay down," he said. And something in that voice made even Liriana obey when they returned to the war hall. Elias's poisoned hand had gone stiff, black veins reaching his wrist. He accepted only a pressure wrap and a stimulant shot that made the palace medic look horrified. The city still burned, the Dominion fleet still circled, but Vault 3 held, and the civilians remained underground. The enemy hailed again. Over Marshal Cragg's armor no longer looked ceremonial. "Princess," he said, "your advisors are entertaining. Open the vaults. Surrender the human." "And I may leave the worker districts intact," Elias whispered. "Ask him why he needs the vaults, if he is winning." Liriana repeated it. Cragg bared his teeth. "I need nothing." "Then leave," Liriana said. Cragg leaned closer, "Child. I have broken worlds older than your bloodline." Elias murmured. "He is stalling. His wounded moon is venting too hot. His hunters are low on torpedoes. His saboteurs failed. He needs us scared before his captains notice." Cragg's eyes shifted toward an officer off projection. Elias said, "There," Liriana smiled over Marshall. "Perhaps your captains should hear this discussion." Cragg cut the channel, but too late. Earth relays, hidden inside Elias's black device, had already sprayed the exchange across open Dominion frequencies. That was the second bow, not of the body, but of the enemy's certainty breaking. Dominion formation trembled. Not retreat, not yet, but disagreement made visible in engine lines. Captains who had expected a quick collapse now saw wounded battle moons, failed sabotage, empty target zones, and an over-marshal demanding shield vaults he supposedly did not need. Elias seized the moment. "Admiral Seleth. Transmit safe corridor terms to any Dominion medical ship or civilian auxiliary that powers down weapons." Seleth stared. "Mercy. Now," Elias said. "Especially now." Cragg cannot punish mercy and maintain siege discipline at the same time. "Make him choose between cruelty and control," Liriana added, "by royal order. Any non-combatant vessel that withdraws beyond the third moon will not be fired upon," General Varkin growled. "We should destroy them." Elias turned to him. "Destroying medics is how you teach the next enemy never to surrender." Varkan did not argue, because even he had begun to understand that human restraint was not softness, but strategy with a soul. The broadcast went out. One Dominion hospital barge dimmed its weapons and drifted backward. Then a repair tender, then supply ships. Cragg hesitated, and that hesitation spread faster than fire. Elias looked at Liriana. He has one option left. Full strike. All moons. No more theater. Liriana looked around the war hall. At generals who had mocked the human and now waited for his impossible answer. At officers bleeding over consoles, at the city map full of blue shelter lights. At the palace where her father had taught her that crowns were not ornaments, but burdens given a shape. She said, "How do we survive it?" Ilias's face looked older than it had at dusk. "You ask the moon to bleed in the right places?" That answer would once have sounded mad. Now no one laughed. He expanded the map to show Asterion's ancient shield network. Not a smooth dome, but layered plates across districts. Vaults, cliffs, transit lines, and undersea anchors. The Dominion expects full shielding. Uniform resistance, predictable collapse. We give them fractures, controlled openings. Channels that pull beam energy into dead stone, empty ceremonial caverns, old magma tubes. "And the sea," Varkin said. "You want to let orbital fire through the shield?" "Yes," Elias said. "Where no one lives," Audrin whispered. "One error kills millions." Elias looked at Liriana. One refusal kills more. The decision landed in her hands, not his. She understood then why the bow mattered. He had not taken her throne. He had forced every terrible choice back to the rightful place. If she accepted his counsel, it would be her command. Her burden, her history, she straightened. "Open fracture channels under my authority. Begin with noble caverns. Hunting preserves empty winter palaces." "And the statue fields," General Varkan muttered. "The statue fields are sacred," Liriana replied. "Then let the dead protect the living." The final Dominion strike began like sunrise in hell. Every battle moon opened its weapons at once, red spears falling through atmosphere. Bending toward the capital, toward shelters, toward vaults, toward everything Liriana had sworn to protect. The shield did not meet them as a dome. It opened in wounds. Blue plates shifting aside and closing, guiding fire into evacuated caverns where generations of arrogant ancestors had stored triumph statues. Marble emperors vaporized. Hunting palaces became glass lakes. Empty parade valleys filled with molten stone. Beam after beam missed living districts by margins so thin that prayer became mathematics. Elias stood with both hands on the command rail now, poisoned fingers shaking, calling adjustments faster than machines. 3 degrees east, close worker plate, open sea anchor. Now hold. Let it pass. Seal, seal, seal. Liriana repeated orders when his voice cracked. And after a few minutes, the generals followed her rather than him. The city survived by obedience to impossible courage. The 5th battle moon overheated first, firing through disrupted atmosphere into reflected energy channels. Its own beam folded back along a sea mirror and carved through its lower weapons deck. Selith's hidden fleet struck again, not for glory, but to widen confusion. Dominion ships collided in defensive panic. Hospital barges fled, supply lines scattered. Crag screamed over open channels for obedience, and his captains heard fear. Then Elias collapsed. Liriana caught him before his head struck the command rail. The poisoned veins had reached his elbow. Sweat stood cold on his face. And for one terrible second, the war hall seemed to lose gravity. General Varkan actually stepped forward as if to help, then stopped. Unsure whether touching a fallen human commander was allowed by whatever legends ruled the night, Elias gripped Liriana's sleeve with his good hand. "Soft underbelly," he rasped. She leaned close. "What, Crag?" he said. "He will bring flagship low to force surrender by visual terror. He needs your people to see him. That exposes his underside, but only if he coughed. Only if Selith fires from the dead moon's shadow and ground batteries fire upward through fractured Channel 7. Varkin said, "That channel runs under the royal tombs." Liriana looked at the map. "Then my ancestors can serve one more time." Elias tried to smile. "Good princess, not child. Not highness, princess." And somehow it steadied her more than titles. She stood, leaving medics to drag him back from the rail. Admiral Selith, Dead Moon Shadow, all ships. General Varkan ground batteries to fracture 7. War Priest opened the royal tomb channel. The priest trembled. The tombs have never been opened in war. Liriana said, "They were closed by the dead. They will be opened for the living." Crag did exactly as Elias predicted. His flagship descended below the battle moons. Vast and black, filling the western sky over Asterion, a flying fortress shaped like a crown of knives. It broadcasts his image onto the clouds, enormous, furious, promising extinction unless the princess surrendered the vaults and the human war criminal advising her. Liriana stepped onto the public channel, her face broadcast across shelters, ships, enemy bridges, broken temples, and burning skies. "Over Marshal Crag," she said, "you have struck empty towers, murdered statues, failed against tunnels, lost your saboteurs, frightened your medics, exposed your captains, and demanded surrender from children under stone. I am Princess Liriana Vey of Asterion, and I am afraid." Her voice shook, but did not break. "I am afraid because decent rulers should fear the death of their people. You are not afraid of that, so you have already lost the only war that matters." Crag roared and lowered the flagship. The royal tomb channel opened. Ground batteries rose through darkness. Selith's fleet ignited from the dead moon shadow. And Liriana gave the order herself. Fire, blue, and silver lances cut engines, severed weapon routes, burned command fins, and left the fortress falling powerless into the upper atmosphere. Caught by emergency gravnets before it could crash into the city, the war did not end with a cheer. It ended with millions of people still holding their breath at dawn. The Carvax Dominion fleet withdrew beyond the third moon under witness of Asterian ships, Earth relays, and every civilian channel still alive. The crippled battlemoon was towed into quarantine, the damaged flagship locked under surrender protocols. And Over Marshal Crag was taken alive because Liriana had ordered it, not because anyone thought he deserved mercy. General Varkin objected until she asked him whether he wanted Crag dead as punishment or alive as proof. He had no answer, which was answer enough. Admiral Selith returned to the palace with burned wings and a new silence around her pride. The war priests opened the lower temples for refugees, publicly admitting that sacred stone had protected more people as shelter than as symbol. And old Marshal Tenrith sat beside the medbay doors as if guarding a shrine. Elias survived because human blood was stubborn, palace medicine was excellent, and Syrah refused to let him die before she finished yelling at him. Liriana visited him after the poison broke. He lay in a recovery chamber, surrounded by silver medical vines, paler than before, one hand sealed in gel, the other resting over the place where his heart had not surrendered. When she entered, he tried to sit. She pointed at him. "Do not bow." He stopped. Acknowledged, she sat beside him. "The generals are waiting outside. That sounds dangerous." "They want to apologize." "That sounds worse." She smiled despite exhaustion. "They also want to know who you really are." Elias looked toward the window, where the city smoked under morning light but still stood. "I am Captain Elias Rowan, civilian transport liaison." Liriana lifted an eyebrow. "Today, yes." He almost smiled. The title seemed less like a lie and more like a shelter. She said, "Marshal Tenrith called you not that one. Varkan panicked before you rose. Crag demanded I surrender a human war criminal. I deserve truth." Elias closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with resignation. "During the Terran Dominion War, I held emergency command over the Orion Refuge Corridor. 700 civilian ships, 3 broken fleets, no reinforcements. Enemy hunters on every route. We survive by doing things no academy teaches politely. Feints, false surrenders, decoy funerals, shield fractures, mercy corridors, shame broadcasts, and once a bow to a queen whose world was burning." Liriana whispered, "You have done this before." Once, he said, the queen lived. The invader did not remain an invader. Stories grew teeth afterward. People made me larger, crueler, cleaner. They forgot the part where I was terrified. "The generals remembered the teeth," Liriana said. "Yes," Elias answered. "And so did our enemies." She studied him. This human who had bowed like a servant and commanded like a storm, you could have taken control completely. "The city would have obeyed you." "No," he said, "it obeyed you. I only showed you where to stand." That answer gave her no hiding place. Every order had been hers, every open shield wound, every sacrificed monument, every mercy corridor, every captured enemy she had wanted help. and he had given her responsibility sharpened into survival. "Why bow?" she asked. Elias looked at her. "Because if I walked in and commanded, your generals would have resisted me until the city burned. If I begged, they would have dismissed me. If I threatened, they would have united against Earth. The bow told the ones old enough to know that I was placing Terran doctrine under your lawful defense. It frightened them into pausing. It gave you a moment to choose." Liriana remembered her hand on his shoulder, and if I had refused, then I would have evacuated whoever I could and watched another court confuse pride with duty. She frowned. "You make obedience sound dangerous," Elias said. "Obedience without conscience is just cowardice in uniform. The best commanders do not collect obedience, Highness. They create courage where panic wanted to live." The apology of the generals was a ceremony no artist dared paint accurately. General Varkin entered first, armor dented, horns lowered, unable to meet Ilias's eyes for several seconds. Then he placed his war claws on the floor, an iron-brewed gesture older than empire. "Captain Rowan, I called you animal," Elias said. "You were frightened." Varkin flinched. "I was arrogant." "Frightened and arrogant often share a uniform," Elias answered. "Apology accepted if you protect the tunnel districts during reconstruction." Varkin looked startled, then bowed less dramatically than Elias had. But with more effort, Admiral Seleth came next. "Wings wrapped in healing cloth, I nearly chased glory and lost my fleet." Elias nodded. "Most officers do once. Wise ones survive the lesson." She lowered her head. "I will teach it." The war priest came last, carrying the ceremonial blade he had dropped when Elias bowed. He knelt, not to the human, but before Liriana Princess. "I mistook sacred things for stone. I asked leave to reopen temple crypts as permanent shelters." Liriana granted it, and the court recorded the moment as religious reform, though later she privately called it common sense arriving late in robes. Finally, old Marshal Tenrith approached Elias and simply said, "Orion Corridor." Elias sighed. "You knew I suspected," Tenrith said. "No one else could turn mercy into a trap and still mean it." Elias looked away. "That is not a compliment." "No," Tenrith said softly. "It is a survival report, weeks later. When the shattered palace windows were replaced with plain storm glass instead of crystal, because Liriana wanted money spent on homes first, envoys from Earth, the Dominion remnants, the trade rings, and suddenly loyal houses gathered in the rebuilt war hall. The human delegation brought medals Elias refused to touch, promotion seals he would not open, and requests that he return for debriefing. He stood behind Liriana's left shoulder in plain black, looking more like a tired guard than the reason the moon had not burned at the formal signing. One Carvax admiral asked quietly, "Princess, is it true the human bowed to you before the battle?" Liriana answered, "Yes." The admiral's throat plates tightened. "And you accepted I did? Why?" he asked. Liriana looked toward Elias. "Because he was not asking me to command him," she said. "He was asking whether I was willing to command myself." Asterisk, the admiral lowered his gaze. "Among our academies, we study the human bow as escalation signal, the moment when Terrans stop negotiating and begin endings." Liriana shook her head. "That is why you lose to them. You think the bow means humans are ready to destroy? It means they have found something worth protecting." Elias's expression did not change, but his eyes warmed by a fraction. Enough that Liriana knew she had struck truth. The accord was signed before sunset. Reparations promised, prisoner exchanges opened. Shield vaults preserved under shared witness, and Crag sent to tribunal alive, furious, and unable to become a martyr. That night, the city held its first celebration, not in the noble quarter, which had no towers left, but in the worker plazas above the shelters, where furnished children danced beside temple singers, pilots, medics, house servants, and generals who had learned to stand in lines for soup. Liriana asked Elias to attend. He tried to refuse, claiming recovery, security, paperwork, and at one point weather. She ordered him as sovereign protected authority to walk outside and be thanked. He looked pained, but obeyed. The crowd did not cheer at first. They parted, silent. Then one little girl from the broadcast, holding her baby brother, stepped forward and bowed to him, not low, not formal. Just enough to say she understood he had stood between her and fire. Elias froze. And every general watching from the plaza edge panicked all over again, but for a different reason. Because the human looked as if this small mercy might finally break him. Years later, enemies would still misunderstand the story. They would say Princess Liriana survived because Earth sent a secret warlord. They would say alien generals panicked because Captain Elias Rowan was death wearing a plain coat. They would say the bow unlocked hidden fleets, forbidden weapons, ancient Terran rage, and all the magnificent nonsense frightened people invent when they cannot admit decency beat them. The truth was simpler and more dangerous. A human entered a room full of generals who had forgotten civilians were the point of war. He bowed to a frightened princess not to make himself smaller, but to make her choice larger. He placed the terrible power of human war beneath lawful mercy, then forced an empire to survive by protecting its weakest first. Every alien general panicked because their histories remembered what happened when humans stopped fighting for pride and started fighting for people. They became patient, inventive, merciful in ways that ruined tyrants, ruthless in ways that spared cities, and impossible to frighten because fear had already been included in the plan. Princess Liriana never forgot the sound of chairs falling when Elias bowed, never forgot how panic became obedience. Obedience became courage, and courage became dawn. And whenever new envoys entered her rebuilt war hall and saw the quiet humans standing one step behind her throne, they asked why the legends called that bow the last courtesy. Liriana would look at the stars beyond the glass, at the city alive beneath them, at the generals who no longer laughed when humans spoke softly, and answer with the lesson Asterion had paid for in fire. Because after a human bows to protect you, the enemy has already been warned. Everything that follows is their own fault.